Onegashimasu. Welcome back to the Goju Karate Center. How important is kobudo, and what is kobudo, and how important is it in its relationship to karate? Should it be a totally separate art, totally separate system, with its own separate hierarchy, dojo, dress, apparel, etc.? Or is it actually part and parcel of what we do as we study Okinawan martial art, whether it is Shorin-ryu, Goju-ryu, Shorin-ryu, Mata-oshi-ryu? How important is it? So I already know some of the answers from some of the schools will be a resounding yes. There is kobudo, there is kata, there's kumite, there's grappling, etc. in this school or that school, and they are taught within the framework of said school and all the associations attached to that. Goju is one of those unique styles in the sense that there are a fair amount of schools that have got kobudo in them, and there are a fair amount of schools that don't have kobudo as part of the syllabus. And I come from one of the lines that has very little kobudo within the syllabus. So, what is kobudo? Kobudo is essentially the weapon system that is taught within the islands of Okinawa and possibly Japan. And I'm, for all intents and purposes, focusing on Okinawan or Ryukyu type or style kobudo, and using weapons such as the sai, the tonfa, the bow, the eku, tembi, etc. All right, and nunchaku, nunchaku. I like nunchaku. So, basic weapons, not including things like sword, bow and arrow, or spear. All right, so generally speaking, far more kind of agrarian weapons, and I'm saying that because some weapons might be considered agrarian and some are definitely not. And that's what it is, and it's sometimes considered the brother-sister relationship between the karate system and the kobudo system. And I have a theory that goes, well, you know, if you got everything in a system, it becomes very hard to kind of categorize it. And I think that what happened somewhere in the last 100 years is that martial arts that wanted to be categorized predominantly as striking arts were lumped together and were kind of pugilistic, so therefore we'll call them karate and karate do and karate jutsu, and martial arts that had a little bit more grappling would be called some kind of jujutsu or judo, and martial arts that had some kind of weaponry were called kobudo. And I actually think that within the framework of Okinawan martial arts, we should be doing something that is inclusive of all these things. So that's my intro, and where I'm going today is I'm working with Sai, and I'm probably holding them the wrong way and doing all sorts of things that are totally against the grain. All right, so the Sai swords, my favorite thing not to see in the dojo is somebody holding them like this. And every time I see somebody doing this, I call them a ninja turtle. And I'm not very good with sais by my own admissions, but I like to try and let my students get a grip, a feel for what a sai is and its weight. And so I'm going to run through some ideas, and then I'm going to try and put them into my karate and basically substitute them into my karate. So if I'm starting from here, all I'm going to start with is this idea of getting my hands around. This is probably the most important thing that I think is missed. I'm just coming a little bit closer, getting the hands around. So thumb, excuse the dirty fingers, chimney season has started. Thumb and fingers like this, and then getting your hands around, and doing that with both. Okay, hopefully I'm back into shot nicely, and then I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to be pressing with my thumbs down like this. I'm going to hook my thumb in on the outside rung to fold it back. So 1, 2. Load shedding and back. So 1 and 2 and back. 1 and 2 and back. 1 and 2 and back. So this is one of the first things I learned when I was doing my last batch of kobudo, and the idea coming that as I would pull these forward, I would pull them through under the arms just for direction. Let's just hang one of those up for now. One of the things I do with my students is I say to them, because often we don't have enough sai for everybody to have 2, so we'll grab onto the back and get our hand around. So it's this coordination, the drill. I have my hands on the back and then turn, finger, fold, control. So I'm effectively learning how to maneuver the sai as I'm going. By no means am I working towards having youngsters doing weaponry like you see in these extreme martial arts competitions. We could rather keep it simple, a little bit more pragmatic, and yeah, we're just introducing it as an interesting exercise in trying to build our overall knowledge of martial art. So we've done both hands, and I can now get to this point. Now, next thing I'm going to be doing is working my gedambarai. And this is where I start to teach no longer a high chamber, but a lower chamber. So just gedambarai. So blocking with the outside of the sai and pointing. Some people will point their fingers. Some people will rest their finger easily on the side. And we get this. And then from there, gedambarai, age uke. So gedambarai, age uke, gedambarai, age uke. So low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high. Sword hand type block, idea side. So winding up and out, winding up and out, up and out. Made a mess of that one. Out. So you can see the moment you start discovering being humble, your left hand, as in my case, is maybe nowhere near as flexible as my right hand. All right, then some kind of idea of attacking. So just some kind of zuki, and then double zuki, all together. Okay, striking. Blunt force trauma, one of the main reasons for a sai is to hit down and to break. Like it's not so much stabbing, but smashing. All right, so coming down. So very useful is 1, round, 2, back, under, out, around, down. Very similar to why we have that overarm exercise over the shoulder with the chishi. All right, so 2 over and down and back. So 2 over and back. So we're starting to get some semblance of what we can use. So we've got very rudimentary, very basic, like pre-sai basics. We've got something that resembles a gedambarai. We've got something that resembles an age-uke. We've got something that opens the sai up as a middle level block. We have got something that comes down from the outside and bludgeons down. And with that, we can put it into a very, very rudimentary kata. So not only do we have load shedding, we have a little bit of an afternoon rain, so there might be a little bit of a background pitter-patter. One of my favorite supplementary kata as a Goju practitioner, and this is where the blasphemy gets really, really good, is fukyu kata. And the reason for this is that I really enjoy the simplicity that the kata brings. And from that simplicity, I think it's an awesome template to overlay other ideas. So you can build the complexity of the movements or the combinations, or you can integrate a weapon, or you can bring in some different body mechanics, different movement. And so fukyu kata for me is where I start to separate out what is sacrosanct in terms of our traditional 12 kata that we practice in our school, and what some schools would say, all right, well, this is the place where you can delve and experiment and do some stuff. So if we take simple fukyu kata daiichi, and I'm gonna simplify the kata down even more just because of the limited amount of space that I'm working with today, would be the idea of maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. On a regular basis, I get into trouble because I will often finish a kata, and then I will go to this position. So I get into trouble for that because it's like too Japanese. But I've got two things that happens. Number one, I don't finish like this. Just finish like this. And therefore, I'm using that piece only. So that was my first idea in fukyu kata. My next idea that I could do is now to start building some of those ideas. So again, if I start and I do my kata, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. So we're still using the sai just in a holding position. Okay, so we can now start going, how else can we use the sai? How can we build ourselves a fukyu sai kata? Very basic kata, based on the fukyu kata and based on the sai, and bringing in some of the basic ideas of the sai. Maybe I decide I need to change how I do the kata. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, oopsie, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Old habits die hard. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can build on it. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to abbreviate my kata for the sake of training. And 1, over the shoulder, 2, down block, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, as a totally different point of departure to explore and experiment and to train on your own and to work and to get ideas from the Sai, but more importantly, to work with the weight. One of the things that has always stood out to me has been the totally different appearance of somebody who does kobudo and what their arm and leg strength is like, how powerful they are, because they're constantly training with the weight. And so they're constantly doing conditioning and developing the musculature, arms, shoulders, etc. Also the increased degree of flexibility. A lot of the movements require you to work on the flexibility. So shoulders, elbows, wrists also get a good workout. And very importantly is the ambidextrous nature of weaponry, that you're required to be flexible, strong, pliable, mobile across both halves of your body, across your strong as well as your weak side. And this works as a great humbler for us because many people are fantastic at doing karate. But when you give them a weapon, their sense of coordination is totally challenged, and so you bring a person down. I brought myself down a few pegs today by doing a video on a weapon that I am not well versed in, and that challenges me. And it's okay. I'm quite okay putting a video out that is not fantastic and taking ownership of the stuff that I do and going, listen, there are much better exponents of pure Sai and pure Tonfa and pure Nunchaku. But as a point of departure for you to become better, to be inspired to keep training, when your training hits those doldrums where it seems like you're going nowhere, why don't you try, take something that you already know that you're relatively good at, such as kata, and maybe its application, and then add in the weapon. A, for the strength and the conditioning. B, to work with a different principle and to challenge your paradigm, to shift your viewpoint so that things will move better. And then C would be, well, you know, what's the self-defense implication? You can't walk down the street with these in some parts of the world. You'll get arrested, all right, for carrying a weapon. It's not legal in some parts of the world. And so how do I take this and use this to improvise another weapon that if I am caught somewhere and I need an alternative and I pick up something, can I take the principles from this and transfer it to something else and then allow the weapon to be a natural extension of my arms and my legs and what I already know. So a very simple, very humble, very basic like segue into a bit of kobudo and a bit of the importance of why kobudo and karate ought to be part of the same syllabus, why every dojo should be teaching some semblance of kobudo, and why we need to return back to our roots somewhere and work on this. And that way we'll get a few ideas that will work for us and to keep ourselves excited and interested. There are only a small number of people who are absolutely and totally besotted and obsessed with the idea of, let me do karate and just karate and I've got to make karate solve every problem. It's okay. You're welcome to be like that. But there will come a time where after 40 years you start going, oh, maybe I've missed something, maybe I could work on something a little bit better, etc. The other interesting point of departure being somebody who has grown up in a line of karate from South Africa that was strongly influenced by Morihei Gohana, Tereo Chinen. Both these senseis at some other point picked up weapons and did demonstrations with weapons to show us what the weapons looked like in the dojo and how they moved and how they worked with it. And both instructors at some other point in their own private lives did a little bit of kobudo. So a little bit of kobudo is like a little bit of Tabasco sauce. Brings a lot of flavor. That's it for today. Arigatou gozaimasu. Sayonara. I hope you have an awesome one.